Hi, Gary. Here we are again.
Hello.
I see we're being recorded. I shall endeavor to behave in that case.
I'll pause here. So whoever would like to start.
I did twist the arm of a fellow colleague
Yeah.
who is on my e-learning team, who also has been teaching for a very long time online for our College of Education. And so I have Kelly Sinkowski with me today, who has some examples of what she's been doing in her own courses that she teaches online. Kelly, are you prepared to go first?
I'm prepared and ready to roll, so no big deal. I wondered if I could share some slides. Is there a share? I don't see the share option. You might have to
I
enable that.
will I
Oh
will
wait, I did find it.
view.
It just popped up. We're
Excellent.
good. Yeah, so I don't know about I'm quite sure everything I'm going to talk about is going to fall within whatever the laws are. So I think I have kind of a lot of interaction and engagement because I've taught fully online for a dozen years for the educational technology graduate program here at GVSU, and I've also dabbled in some of the like 400 level classes when they need me for that. So I'm just gonna share just some ideas. Hopefully you guys can take away some of these, copy whatever you want, email me if you want more examples or something. Anyway, um, so I just went with engaged online learning for the title. I only have, I don't know, maybe 5, 6 slides here to show you to keep me on track. But just briefly, what I do when I design my courses, because I'm an instructional designer, but for my own, I make sure that I have the 4 types of participation and interaction in my course. Faculty to student, uh, and I'll explain what that means by that. It's not simply just grade your papers. I have student to student, student to community, which is a little lesser known one that I make sure I put in there for relevancy, and then student to content, obviously. Student to content used to kind of be implied because they're in your class. It's not implied that they're going to do your content. So I have some things to engage them with that as well. So everything I talk about fall into one of those categories, types of participation or action. Instructor presence. This is a big piece for me, being present in your course. I've preached this to faculty that I train over and over and over. I have a welcome module, I have my bio, I have a personal video welcoming them. And what I tell other faculty members is it's simply what would you say in front of your class in a face-to-face, even though this is online. And you can also use everything I'm talking through for hybrid or in person as well. But specifically, I'm going to talk through the online portion of this. But what do you say the first day? You talk about yourself, you hit the high points of your assignments that you're going to cover, and then a little something about yourself. 1, 2 minutes. That's what I do. Then I also have 2 online class chats. Now, this is a fully online course, so if someone can't make it, I get it, but pretty much all of my students, for the most part, come unless they have a job or something like that in the evening. But I usually teach, I'm teaching in the educational technology program, so most of them work during the day, but we do still get a couple of those that are working evenings, and that's fine. But I do online class chats because it's fully online. So week 2, I want to make sure everyone's tracking. I don't want anyone getting lost. Week 2, we've already had readings. We're getting in the content. Can you find your readings online? I really just want to answer all of those like syllabus questions they would have had in a face-to-face on week 1 to make sure that they are not getting lost right away since it's fully online. I also do a midterm 15-minute one-to-one with them all. They don't have to do this again. I can't require it, but they pretty much all do. And I talk through any course questions, and then I talk through what are they brainstorming for their final project that they have to do, because 9 times out of 10, no, they have not figured out what they're going to do for a final project, and we're at the midterm. So it's kind of getting them thinking through that. And when anyone selects a project, it's this big, and I help them narrow down to something doable in that meeting. And then week 11, I do my second and last online class chat because that's going to the final project again. Are there any, and actually this is a week 2 where they are turning in their peer review. So basically their whole project is due week 11 in my class because they do a peer review. So I want to make sure everyone knows how to do this, how to do the peer review, all that good stuff. So I want all of them on track with the final project. And of course, the generic things, email responses, I usually get those back within a couple hours to them. Sometimes minutes because I have it on my phone, but and I do give feedback on all assignment submissions. I know not everyone does it, but I give feedback on all of them, everything they turn in. So that's my instructor presence piece. I talked some of these things through with Kim the other day and just kind of what things I should share. And one of the things that she suggested when I shared with her was my scaffold learning. I scaffold my tech tool and I scaffold my course content. So even though I have graduate students, they have all different professors. They may never have had an online course still. And again, sometimes I do 400 level students too, but my course content, I'll have them do a midterm. It's a paper, but I use Padlet quite a bit through my course. So Padlet, I'm going to kind of go over 1 and 2 together here. So Padlet, they do an introduction in the very first week. So it's low stakes. There's no points. Introduce yourself on Padlet. It's their first introduction to the tool. They have fun with it. And so no points for that one, right? So they just introduce the Padlet. Then by their mid section of their course, they're using Padlet now for a 5-minute. It's called an interview summary, where they are interviewing someone. They come back. They are just telling you the rubric things, the questions. What did they learn? It's short, 5 minutes, but they've learned now how to time themselves. Because we use Padlet for our final presentation at the end of the semester, because they're going to post it, comment on each other's, ask questions to each other. That final project presentation that goes along with the project is 10 minutes. So they've already learned how to time it, hopefully midterm for their more informal presentation that they're giving me. It's just discussing something. So when they're ready to present, they're not trying to figure out how to do Padlet and how to time things. And hopefully they got all those nerves out. My course content, I do, like I said, I also do my final project scaffolding. In week 2, they do a tech scavenger hunt online and find a bunch of different tech tools, and they can use that in their final project. There's a bunch of other steps we go through for the final project. I scaffold things like a case study. They read a bunch of case studies in week 3. Week 4, they do a group discussion board. So now I'm getting them together with the other students online. They schedule that online, meet with each other. And they submit a group discussion board on their case study that they have found and answering those rubric questions as well. So I kind of scaffold that as well for them. I'm a big proponent of relevancy. Like, why do I have to take your course kind of thing? I don't want them to be there just to check a box to get their degree. So even as simple as find a job post in week 2, I've suggested a lot of faculty members have the students find a job post where something they're learning in that class is required for a job. And all of a sudden it becomes relevant. I better pay attention. I got to do the content. It's just a different mindset for students if you're building in relevancy. So I involve the community members or professional members. They need to go do an interview. This is what I mentioned as their midterm project. They do an interview of a leader in an organization, professional setting that they would like to work in the future. And I tell them about this from week 1. So they have several weeks to find this, schedule it. I remind them to schedule the interview throughout the course modules. So they interview someone, and then that's when they give me their 5-minute reflections on the rubric items. But then the next week, their papers are due. So they've already talked through it all, put it on Padlet, commented on each other's, and then they can write the paper on it with their kind of the rationale. And then expert guest speakers, I have called in expert guest speakers and done them on Zoom in the past. And I don't do lessons on Zoom. I should have said that earlier when I talked about our one-on-one class chats. They're just for questions and talking through assignments and my reflections on their grading their assignments kind of thing. I don't do any lectures. It's all fully online with my videos and the content and the readings. The final project for relevancy, I just built in that as far as I really coach them on doing a final project that they can put in their professional portfolios that they can use at a later date. They can use it in their role. So I'm doing educator. So I'd say this is a time to do your dream lesson, dream units. Take the time to do that you can show off later and then use it in your classroom. So just building in a relevancy piece that they can use for their future. Experiential learning. So I used to use Flip too. Now I use everything on Padlet. But I do use a lot of experiential learning as well. So AI, we all know that can be a scary thing for people that never used it before. It's always Terminator in their head kind of thing. And so I do want them to be introduced to it. I have them do a couple different activities for this. So whatever job they're going into, it doesn't really matter. They're going to be expected to understand and use some AI tools. So I don't want it to be so much of a scary thing for them. As I go through each semester, I get more and more students who've already used Chat GPT, of course. But I still always get the few that never have. So I do have them try that out. I should say too, I do have an AI policy in my syllabus as far as what I think is appropriate use of it and what I feel like is inappropriate use. So they've already seen that in my week 1, those kinds of things. So I do have them try it. A fun one, if you would like your students to kind of dabble a little bit, I have new the character.ai where you choose a historical character or a celebrity or whatever, and you talk to them, you interview them, basically talk to them. I tried to stump Albert Einstein because that sounded fun. But I mean, you can use it for anything. And what it teaches you is how to interact, how to ask questions, but also it teaches you that there's false information. And I think all those lessons I want my students to learn, even though they're just having a fun activity, I want them to learn that about AI in itself and for them to see it. Because you can tell them, hey, it can give you false citations, those kinds of things. But, yeah, kind of thing if they don't check them out. But at least this way, they're kind of seeing a lot of the falsehoods like glaringly when you kind of talk to these people, these characters. So the other thing I do is any VR activity I can find. I use gather.town just to introduce them to an online, simple, fun little activity. But I have found other OERs. McGraw-Hill has a free AR app. There's a Visible Body app or AR online that you can do for anything in health sciences, things like that. And based on your subject content area, you can have them do free AR apps. I'm a big proponent of OERs, free resources for education. So definitely that builds engagement instead of them just reading a textbook kind of thing. We don't even have a textbook in my course. I know that's going to freak out a few of you, but I do have, scholarly articles and readings I have to do, those kinds of things, and videos. But another one I use in my course is Notebook LM. I don't know if any of you have tried that. I know Kim and I have talked about that. We've used it for different things, but in my class, the Notebook LM is a free Google website, basically, and it's super fun. What I use it for was, you can use it to summarize articles, things like that. But what I used it for was I put one of my documents, we use Blackboard Ultra. So I have a whole document like lesson basically. So I just copied all that, pasted it in there and had them, and they immediately come up with a podcast. There's 2 people talking to each other about the content, everything that I put in my lesson. So I put that in one of mine because I know no matter how much you try, the students don't read everything or listen to all your stuff, and they don't. So what I did is pretty much repeat. No one even commented on the podcast was the exact same thing that was in the document of the lesson. Because I thought, if they don't get it one way, maybe that would be more interesting for them to learn to listen to it. And then AI role-playing scenarios, again, that's building that relevancy, the experiential learning piece, whether it's simulations, and it could be simulations as far as, the super amazing built ones on campus, or it could be free ones online. AI role play scenarios, you can get things, again, like I did the character AI, things like that you can get online as well, depending on your subject area. But I've played around with, we don't use it as the university yet, but I played around with the conversations, the role playing. So in the LMS, I do use a lot of the assist tools, and like I was mentioning, the role play conversations are coming, but I did have a student look at one I had built. And she was really excited about one of my students this semester, and she was really excited about that. It'd be a really cool tool. So I was like, all right, we're going to put that in there in the summer where they're actually talking to a parent. I've given it a whole bunch of, you know, characteristics of the student we're talking about, blah, 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 kind of thing. So anything you could do that with, as far as whether you're in the health sciences, whether you're in anything. I mean, even like math, you can find simulations online, whether it's roller coaster things or whatever that they can think through, but making it real, whatever it is, making it real, how they'll apply that in a future role, future job. I do use the rubrics. We do have that turned on, the AI assist, where I have a rubric that I did on paper, but I want to see what it comes up with, and then I just modify it. I put some of my stuff in there based on some of their words that they had. I use knowledge checks in the documents, and it's so fun to see you get 7 out of 12 people or whatever, how many people are actually doing that. Peer reviews is another one that I use. It's a tool in the LMS, and that I've used every semester, and the students really have taken to that, where they're assessing each other's with the rubric and giving feedback for improvement and what they did right, kind of thing. And then that's all before they turn in their final paper project. Our project isn't just a unit and lessons, it's also a rationale paper. So you could spit out a lesson if you want on AI, but the rationale paper that goes with it is how does your lesson address all these rubric things? So they have to do the rationale paper as well. Because obviously AI could do your lesson if you wanted. So I'm trying to think anything else. The discussion board, I do use discussion boards. It's not every single week, but I use maybe 10 out of 14 of them, because they are giving me their experiences based on my content. So tell me what happened with what were your impressions when you did these activities, the AI activity or the VR activity or those kinds of things? How would you apply that in a future job? So these aren't things where they can just plug into AI and spit out an answer. They're my discussions are share your experiences, your thoughts, how would you apply this, those kinds of things. But I do use them for that. I even use discussions for the group case study discussions as well. But Padlet is throughout my course as well. I'm trying to think anything else. I think that's all. I know I talked really fast, so I know a bunch of people have to talk. So any questions, I can take questions. You can email me. I thank you for listening to what I do in my course.
Thanks, Kelly.
Kelly, there was a question about your knowledge checks. Maybe you can share a little bit about what that means as a knowledge check. And that's part of our LMS right now, but maybe you can explain what that means.
That's good. I can't see the chat, so thank you for that. Yeah, I'm gonna stop sharing real quick. So the knowledge checks are, so in Blackboard Ultra, it is an option in the content, like in your text box, basically, that you can, or those options of blocks, you can click on a knowledge check, and then you can build in like a multiple choice kind of question for them. Coming soon this summer with Blackboard, with Anthology, they're going to be offering AI simulated questions based on your content. But right now, I just add in whatever I want to ask them to make sure. It might be about a video they watched, something in their video to make sure they're watching the video. You can do that in Panopto too. We have that if you want to put in a check in, a quiz in that, embed that. But I do the knowledge checks because then I can pull it from any of the lessons, the readings or the videos or anything. And it's literally just at the end of your document or midway, wherever you want to put it, it's just a question with the multiple choice answers. And it's not gradable, like it's not up for a grade. It's just a knowledge check, like a informal. So it's a formative assessment on are they getting everything or not. So it's something they can do more than once. Like they can keep taking it if they don't get it right. So I'm hoping they're going back if they didn't read that or they didn't watch that or anything to make sure in an online course that they are actually reading and watching the content, because that's hard to tell. You can look in analytics, but it's still hard to tell.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Kelly. It was good to see some practical, actual examples of interaction tools. You had everybody at Padlet as soon as you said that in the chat,
I love Padlet. I'm a big proponent of it.
saying I love it and throwing in examples and things like that. So if you get a chance, check out the chat. Um, it does make me think like I use a AI chatbot in my course where students can ask like foundational questions that maybe they should already know, but they can just go off and ask it. It's a little different type of interaction than what we think of in terms of interacting with your instructor. You're just interacting with AI, but I think they get a lot from it. And also, you mentioned the podcast tool. I've taken kind of text-based introductions to my modules. Then I added some images to it, and now lately, thrown the text into an AI podcast tool, and then added an audio component to the introduction to the module. So very easy to do, but I don't know, seems to add another dimension to the module. Anybody else have any thoughts on anything that Kelly presented? Or yeah, Ian had put something in the chat about Gather Town. Class, we had a tool that we were using that was sort of like Gather Town. Remember what that was called?
Remo.
Remo, that was it.
Oh, yeah. I haven't tried Gather Town, but yeah, Remo.
Looked
Hop
pretty
in.
cool.
I posted the invite link. Don't get distracted though.
Anybody else have any thoughts on that presentation or something else you wanted to share about that?
We're using Canvas, and it was interesting to me to hear the similarities between what she's doing and the ways I approach my projects, because they have a cover memo to turn in with every significant project, and it includes some reflection questions, to which, of course, it would be nice if I gave replies. Well, you can't reply to everything, but in my rubrics, I always have comments, and they're the most common comments that I would say back to a student about their work or about the answers to the questions. And I have, 5, 6, 7 on one line. And then maybe you'd want to click 2 of those, and there's 0 points. So then I make another identical line with the same things repeated so that I can click 2 or even 3 of those comment options for each individual student. And it saves a lot of typing. There is an option in Canvas to have pre-made responses in a list, which you can alphabetize or sort later, but whatever. Anyways, for pre-made comments, and that's just adding to what she was saying.
Cool. Thank you, Linda Lee. And also, it looks like Ian is posting some more things in the chat about Jamboard, if you haven't tried that tool before. All right. Hey,
That one's gone
Michelle.
away, Jamboard.
Yeah. Michelle, you
Yep,
had
Jamboard
mentioned that
is
you
no
had
more.
some things you wanted to share.
I do. I don't have my instructor's not here, so if there's someone else faculty member came, I don't want to jump in front, but mine is also there's a lot of similarities with Kelly, so which was
Okay. Are there any other faculty members who are on the call who wanted to present something? All right, go ahead then, Michelle.
all right. So we are actually one of the things that was kind of tricky with this is we're switching from this course in particular. So we're switching from Blackboard to Canvas. And this is our last semester in Blackboard, but we still have courses that are going back and forth. This course in particular is intercultural communication. And one of the things they used to do is, or they do in it, is an authentic assessment. And it used to partner with our DEI department. Okay, so that's kind of got to change too because of executive orders and things. So that's changed. And we're migrating. And then we're also trying to get our hands around, AI. So all these things we're trying to do at the same time. But what we've really been leaning into is scaffolding. I thought it was great that Kelly said that. And I think it's really in face-to-face class in person, it's just a real basic part of teaching and kind of what you learn in education. But I found for us in online learning, I think we especially our older classes, we didn't have as much of it. It seemed, I think it also just looked like a lot online. When you really start scaffolding, you're adding a whole lot more items in the course, and that can be overwhelming. But we've really found it is a really good way. It's better for student learning. When we scaffold things and break it down, they're less likely to use AI. Not that they won't, because they certainly do for really easy things. But the each little step is a little less overwhelming, so they're more likely to take that leap and do it themselves. And then, as far as when we're talking about RSI and student and faculty interaction, there are a lot more places for the faculty to give feedback that they can then apply immediately to whatever the big project is. And so it also, makes the final project, it improves the learning, it makes the final project better. It actually makes grading easier too, because once they get to the end, they've gone through so much, the faculty, the teacher's not really seeing it for the first time. So the end of the semester, although still kind of crazy and overwhelming with emails, it's a little bit easier in that end. So what, my job as instructional designer has been to really slow faculty down and tell them it will be okay if we keep adding things. So it's like, I feel like my job as an instructional designer and as a parent is just to slow people down all the time. They love it. Okay, so this one is the part where we had one, when we originally designed this course, we had one module, and it was about kind of what we called resume-worthy assignments, because we're trying to get them something that they can do on their resume. And we did that by partnering with, in this case, it was the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, but it's switching to career services. So it was partnering with something outside of the classroom so that students could, they did some real work. And then they could put that on their resume. So it went from one module to 5. And as we move it over to Canvas, we're adding a little bit more too. Again, we just kind of keep slowing it down. So I'm not going to go through all of it. So here's us selling the resume-worthy assignments, and they're playing with their career outlook and trying to figure out, just make a choice. They got to make a choice on what career they want to explore, because they're going to layer that in this. Here's our options. These are, like we said, these are the old options. Now it's going to switch from these presentations to, it's going to be an Instagram post for our career services. And then some of the other courses, we partner with other ones. So the students have to get they have to understand all the content, and then they apply it they create these Instagram posts, and we give them to career services, and they can decide whether to use them or not. But either way, the students, they can choose to give permission, and then, if they get used or not, it still doesn't change that they did this work for career services. So what we added this time is like the brainstorming part. Because again, we tried to slow it down. So this one's the newest part, where we have them. We used to say, like, pick a topic and post it and get feedback. And now it's like, okay, let's brainstorm. And then let's also have them use AI here. So what she did is gave them down here some specific language to put into ChatGPT. Because what we were finding, and this was like some of our other courses, especially our literature ones, is it's like write a paper, and the students are just putting the prompt in, they get the whole paper, they turn it in. And at the end, they don't know enough to even be analytical about if this paper's right or wrong. It's just, they have no idea. So this is also taking them back way to the beginning and using, like, an appropriate level for an intro is use ChatGPT to brainstorm topics, which I find really helpful, because that takes me forever. And they are at a level where they can analyze these and pick something that they like and build off of it. So they get a real entry level use out of it. So they do this, so they go through and they kind of, they obviously don't have to, but this is just an option. And then this is where they're putting it in the discussion board. And this is probably switching from listing 3 possible topics to your own, but they start using the brainstorming, just like, if you were in person, we would all sit in a circle and maybe we'd share topics and we would all talk about it. But figuring out what this looks like in a discussion board, it's not really post your opinion, it's give 3 ideas, and then they respond to each other. And then the faculty can also, this is a really great place to go in and see where everybody is. Are they on the right track? So she can give feedback to each one. Also, especially times when, depending if it's midterms, if everything's overwhelming, Sometimes instead of responding on the discussion board, it might be one response in an announcement. Like this is, I look at I look at the discussion boards. This is what I noticed. These are things, these were some great ideas. Here's some things that maybe you guys want to work on. So there's a couple ways to get that feedback to students with the same kind of assignment here. And then the nice thing is when the students get they get feedback from other students, it's of value to the initial poster to go back and read it. So they go back and they can read it and put this all together and use it in their next step, which is going to be to commit to a topic, which may or may not be in here. As we're moving between and building out courses and making changes in live courses and changing topics. Yeah, so they go to the next one. They have to commit to their topic in writing and then just make a plan. So this is just a journal. Like I wouldn't say like as far as we're talking about response, you probably wouldn't respond. Just look at them all and maybe only respond to the ones that seem problematic. And it really just goes through with the whole, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but that was kind of like, as we're doing this with other courses, it's that idea of slowing everybody down and really trying to think about what are your steps? What do you want students to do? And these are all, like I said, opportunities for the faculty to have that interaction that also creates a stronger final product too. And it goes on for like 3 more modules. That's all. You have any questions?
Not seeing any in the chats. Thanks, Michelle. I can't imagine anything more nerve-wracking than presenting someone else's course to all your peers here. So you did great. I really enjoyed it. I know that there were some other folks who contacted me with some ideas. I know, Sarah, you had mentioned that you also had a faculty member who wanted to share but couldn't make it. So I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to share.
Yeah, sure. So this faculty member, just to like kind of further support what Kelly said, she's a huge Padlet person and she loves Padlet. So another plug for that. She has her students interact in that way, and she uses that a lot actually in place of discussion forums, simply because students can sometimes be sick of discussion forums. I think discussions are a great way for interaction amongst students, especially if the professor is also involved in it. And they can do that in Padlet too. So I'm not dissing discussions. I'm just saying that it is a great alternative. I will also jump in and share a little bit of her course. One thing that that hasn't been said today that she talked about in hers is we are in Canvas. So this is Canvas for us. This is just 1 week in her course. This is a course that she taught in this past fall that she was going to share. And it is it's a teaching pathway for our students. So these are people that are already in the classroom, like as parapros or things like that. And so these are online students that are in the classroom but not as teachers and want to be teachers. So they definitely have a lot of experience. So she kind of brings that in with the discussions with the Padlets. And she, similar to what Michelle was talking about, it's very like scaffold in terms of like building up elements. But one thing that she talked about was that she often has more than one like kind of bigger assignment each week. But what she does is she prioritizes one. For this week, it would be the children's literature lesson plan. And what instead of grading with a rubric, what she does is she will use the like annotated features, and I would show you, but I didn't actually get permission to show the actual like her grade, and I don't think it's appropriate to show you a student's grade. So I'm just showing you this. But she talked about how she uses uh instead the annotated features in Canvas to like leave comments and everything. And then we have Canvas Studio at Olivet, and she uses the video feature, the screenshot, and she then records herself. She doesn't record her face, but she records her voice and the assignment and walks through her comments. Obviously, that's a lot of work, so she doesn't do it for every assignment. She like picks a big one, and it's usually every other week that she does that, and it creates this really good like interaction between her and the students across time and space, because it's not like it's happening in the moment, but it is this really good substantial interaction that she's giving verbally her feedback, she's explaining her comments and things to the student, and they're not super long videos. She tries to keep them under 2 minutes. Her goal is actually just 1 minute. Sometimes they do get longer, but then it gives, not only does the student see the written feedback through the comments, but then they get this verbal explanation, and it's really helpful. She's had great responses to that. And students will even respond back, not always in video form. More often they write back, but like with questions or follow-up or just thanks. So that's one thing I just wanted to add that she does on top of um, the different different things that Kelly and Michelle and Linda Lee have shared already. I think those are great. But that's just another element, like using that kind of video feature. And I know not everybody has Canvas Studio or Canvas, but if you have something else, it can be a really great tool to do. And yeah, I agree with you, Kelly. The audio feedback is so much faster. Like she does type it out, but like you don't have to type everything out then if you're also going to record a video of it. So it can be a lot faster actually. Yeah. Anybody else have any questions?
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then next, getting students to find where you put that audio feedback is
Right.
important.
Making sure that they actually see it.
Yes. So did that trigger any other thoughts? I know class had um, put something in the chat about maybe showing some Remo interactions if there weren't any other examples. Class, it looks like you are up if you're ready.
Yeah, sure. So Remo, if you're not familiar with it, and there's kind of a limit to how much I can show on the fly here, but as opposed to what we're doing right now, Zoom, where we're looking at a grid, um, you basically create a floor plan that actually looks like space you use on a regular basis. So we use Remo primarily for large group meetings, like our strategic leadership team, which if I call one up here and share it, you can see, get this out of the way. So this is just a room layout that looks exactly like the room we met in at our Lakeshore building. If you join Remo, if you're not familiar with it, you by default get put at a table with an available seat. You can interact initially with anybody else who is seated at your table. You're free to wander about the cabin and join a different table if you want to talk to somebody else. And then folks who are presenters will occupy like these 4 seats on the right side of the screen. When it is time for them to present, we go into presentation mode, and then everyone is seeing what the people on stage are presenting. At any point in time, someone from the general audience could be pulled up on stage and share a presentation. So that's kind of the idea here. And like I said, we've built a few different floor plans to match the spaces that we most frequently use. Just to give people who are remote a little more sense like they're actually in the same space as everybody who showed up in person. And we have tried it with smaller groups. I think we tried it with, let's see here, a class with Gary. I've tried it with class with one of our English instructors. And you can design the room so that people are, gathered as foursomes in what looks like more comfortable furniture. And then again, when it's time to present, everybody is actually seeing the screen of whoever is presenting. And you go back to we call it the lobby mode or what we're looking at here. And then you're just interacting with people around your table. So that's the basic idea. I'm not sure what the other one that was mentioned by Ian looks like. I haven't tried that out yet, whether it's similar. So
He did create an ETOM space for us in case we want to jump in and
yeah, it
try it
looks
out.
like the hotel up in Petoskey.
Yeah. Very nice, very nice. Does that make anybody else think of other tools? Thanks, class. I know that for me, when I teach in a high flex environment, I'm always looking for ways to get the two components to interact more. Right now I have a screen where my students who are remote are on, and then I've got a camera on my students that are in the classroom, and I'm often trying to show them each other so they can interact with each other. There's speakers in the ceiling so they can hear each other, but this is kind of a cool tool to allow them to actually feel like they're joining in at a table with the students and interacting. And it's the idea that you can interact with each other or with the instructor. So anybody else have anything that they use along those lines or totally different tool in terms of promoting interaction in your classes?
I'll say one other thing. Sorry if I'm cutting somebody else off. Um, you can jump in right when I'm done. But in the high flex rooms where, I have seen half the class in person, half the class at home, I have noticed that when the instructor decides to do group discussions and sends the folks who are at home into a Zoom room, so let's say there's 8 people at home, she creates a couple of Zoom rooms, sends 4 people into each of those. She kind of loses the ability to interact with each of those remote Zoom rooms without it being, entirely audible to everybody who's there in person. So I've been kicking around the idea as to whether or not we should consider a physical room within the room. So if you're teaching high flex and you do group discussion and you've got Zoom rooms at home, you as the instructor have the ability to go into a small, they're also called Zoom rooms, but those small glass 2-person contained spaces. You could then join one of the Zoom groups, not be a distraction to everybody else who's in person in your class, or you could assign a couple from your class to participate in a Zoom group for the same reason. Hopefully that makes sense, but we need some sort of in-person capacity to divide in order for people to have equivalent conversations, even if they're remote.
Yeah, that is interesting because that's exactly what I do in my classes. I do Zoom breakouts with my virtual students, and I'm doing group discussions in the same room with my students, and everybody in the room stops to hear me talking to whoever's in the breakout room. So that's an interesting use of space. I know that Kelly asked if there was a free version of Remo. Then maybe she can, it also looks like Ian posted something about a trial period.
I, off the top of my head, don't know. We've been using this since pretty early in COVID because it became our substitution for our large group gatherings. Um, it was, I think they took advantage of everybody else who might be interested. They charged a lot early on. Their pricing has come down. They've got a lot of different pricing plans. You can negotiate with them and say, well, I want to use it this frequently with this number of people, and they'll come up with a more workable price for you. So I would think they would have a free version you can try out, because I'm sure I demoed it without paying for it before we subscribed. I do know that Remo was just merged with another company. I think it's called events.com. So that term Remo is probably gradually going to go away. because it's just another feature that events.com has available to people who do virtual conferences. But I would also, if you wanted to shoot me an email, be happy to set up a demo with folks. You can see what it's like.
Also, Beth posted about iPad robots in the chat. And I don't know if it was you or Grand Valley. I know Ferris State University has some of them.
I
Yeah.
used them at first years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they ran their course, right? I think Grand Valley, and I learned this from Eric, had a few of them. The battery dies, you can't service it yourself, it becomes kind of useless. Ferris has kept at least a couple of them functional. We went to check one out not too long ago. But when you have a big campus, then you start thinking, okay, where can I put this and leave it so that it doesn't have to travel very far to reach the classroom you want to have it in? So I think even though Ferris has kept a couple of theirs going, I don't think they get very much use, and they're kind of quirky. So
There's also a question, Heather asked, does anyone know of a way to turn assign reading into actual points? I know that when I assign a reading from something, I often tie that to a discussion or some other activity, and that's where they get the points for. I don't know if anybody else has any ideas they want to throw in there. Social annotation tools. It looks like there's some good ideas in the chat. You all would rather just be quiet and chat. Speaking of interactions, I know that one thing that came up in my mind, even from the start of the presentation, was the challenge I have with a total asynchronous class, right? Students tell me, and I believe that they would benefit from having some synchronous chat, Zoom or something in it, even some activities that class was talking about, but I typically don't require it as part of my asynchronous class. I make it optional, and then I try to do it at times that work out best for them. I don't know if anybody has any tools or ideas that work well in environment, but my level of participation in optional synchronous activities and asynchronous classes, it fluctuates. Just say that.
I know we mentioned Padlet earlier. I do have an example from a class for the people who didn't see it if they want to see how it's used.
Sure.
Like a 30-second example. So
yeah,
it does take some work from because we're in the enterprise system, it doesn't really play well with it. It doesn't connect to the grade center, and it doesn't really play well when we do our course copies. But we have faculty who either use it in a face-to-face or they're standalones, or they're just willing to do that little bit of work to kind of reconnect them. So these are book shares. This is one of our ed courses, or part of our ed courses. So it's something that you could do in a discussion board, but the nice thing about Padlet is it's just more visual and you can see it all. So it has a very similar look, like you had book share. You have to post it, you have to comment. I have an example with all the student stuff blurred out. So it's nice for those of you who are asking. So they just uploaded, just copied, looks like images. And then, whoever the posting, they post some text here, and then people can post their responses in there. You can also, it's really nice to upload any kind of document, or you can record videos in here or upload videos. So it's really great for different kinds of media. Plus it's visual. It does kind of give them that nice, I don't know, it feels more interactive just because it looks better. It's nicer than looking at a bunch of heavy text. So and she uses them like something like this in every module. They have discussion boards, they have a Padlet, so it's a really interactive class anyways. But that's just how that's used.
Thanks, Michelle.
One.
All right, we are coming up on 1 o'clock. Is there anything else anybody else would like to bring up or have a question about? I mean, from my perspective, this is an ideal meetup because we all got together and informally shared tools that we're using on our campus. But I want to make sure if there are any other questions that you have or anything you'd like to show us that you get a chance.
If anybody wants to try Remo out, you want to just have them email you, Gary, and we can set up a demo.
Sure. Yeah, I'll send something out after the meetup. And if anybody's interested, we'll send them your way.
Can we get Kelly? Can we get your slides? Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for the work you put in on that too. All right,
I
everybody.
can sit in the chat in a second here if we hang on a minute because it's just a Google slide. I'll get
Yeah, definitely. Would you like me to sing something or?
What's easier for you? Do you want me to send it to you, Gary, and you put it out, or do you want me to just put it in the chat in a second
You
here?
can put it in the chat. That's fine.
Okay.
All right. Anybody else have something they would like to share? I'm going to stop the recording.